Let us resume our study of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 4. Ambarish Maharaj offended by Durvasa. Let us begin with Mangalacharan. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine नामश्रेष्ठं मनुमपि सचीपुत्रमत्र स्वरूपं रूपं तस्याग्रजमुरुपुरीं माथुरीं घोष्टवातीं राधाकुण्डं गिरिवरमहो राधिका माधवासां प्राप्तो यस्य प्रतितकृपया श्रीगुरुं तं नतोऽस्मि कृष्णादन्यमजानत क्षणमपि स्वप्नेऽपि विश्वेश्वरे तस्मिन् भक्तिमहैतुकीं विदधतो हृत्काय वाग्वी सदा श्रीलान् सद्गुणपुञ्जकेलिनिलयान् प्रेमावतारानहं वन्दे भागवतानि माननुलभम् मूर्ध्नानि पत्यक्षितौ आजानुलम्बितभुजौ कनकावदातौ संकीर्तनैकपितरौ कमलायताक्षौ विश्वम्भरौ द्विजभरौ युगधर्मपालौ वन्दे जगत्प्रियकरौ करुणावतारौ जयतां सुरतौ पङ्गोर्मम मन्दमतिर्गति मत्सर्वस्वपदाम्बोजो राधा मदनमोहनौ नीलाचलनिवासाय नित्याय परमात्मने बलभद्रसुभद्राभ्यां जगन्नाथाय ते नमः। पादौ यदीयौ प्रथमा द्वितीयौ तृतीयतुर्यौ कथितौ यदूरो नाभिस्तदा पञ्चम एव षष्ठौ भुजान्तरं दोर्युगलं तथन्यौ कंठस्तु राजन्नवमो यदीयो मुखारविन्दं दशमं प्रफुल्लम् एकादशो यस्य ललाटपत्रं शिरोऽपि तु द्वादश एव भाति तमादिदेवं करुणानिधानं तमालवर्णं सुहितावतारम् अपार संसार समुद्र सेतुं भजामहे भागवत स्वरूपं भजामहे भागवत स्वरूपम् ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप गदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे मूकं करोति वाचालं पंकुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्री गुरु दीनतारिणाम्। Hare Krishna. So let us have a quick overview of what is going to be discussed in 9th canto. In the 9th canto, we are going to discuss about the descendants of the Sun dynasty and Moon dynasty. Okay, and we are going to discuss about the activities and the pastime of the Lord and various personalities, various great devotees who took birth in this dynasty. And why are we discussing about these two dynasties? It is because it is in these two dynasties that the Supreme Lord personally appeared. Lord appeared as Sri Ramachandra in the Sun dynasty, and he appeared in his personal form, Sri Krishna in the Moon dynasty. So today we will be discussing about, we will begin the section on Ambarish Maharaj and Durvasa Muni cursing Ambarish Maharaj. Shri Sukha Uvacha Nabhago Nabhagapatyam Yam Tatam Bharatarakavim Yavishtam Vyapajandayam Brahmacharinam Agatam. So Shukadeva Goswami continues to Parikshit Maharaj after reciting about Chavana Muni and Sukanya. So the chapter ended with Kakudmi actually giving Revati in marriage to Lord Balaram. So Shukadeva Goswami continues. The son of Nabhaga, named Nabhaga, lived for a long time at the place of his spiritual master. Therefore, his brothers thought that he was not going to become a Grihastha and would not return. Consequently, without providing a share for him, they divided the property of their father among themselves. When Nabhaga returned from the place of his spiritual master, they gave him their father as his share. Now you see, Nabhaga is one of the descendants in the Sun dynasty. So Shukadeva Goswami is actually speaking to Parikshit Maharaj about various descendants from Sun dynasty here. He spoke about Sudyumna, and then he spoke about various sons of Manu, and then he spoke about Sharyati and Sukanya, and then he spoke about Kakudmi and Revati, and then he is now speaking about Nabhaga. So Nabhaga was a descendant in the Sun dynasty, okay, and he had a son called Nabhaga. So Nabhaga, he actually spent a lot of time in the spiritual master. Generally what happens, when somebody is of the age of 25 or so, or maybe when he's ready for marriage, he takes permission from the Guru, especially one who is in the higher Varnas. After spending sufficient time getting trained in spirituality in the ashram, he takes the permission of the Guru and enters into Grihastha ashram. But some of them take to Naishtika Brahmacharya. So Nabhaga, the son of Nabhaga, a descendant of the Sun dynasty, he spent a lot of time at the place of his spiritual master. Therefore, his brothers thought that he was not going to become a Grihastha and he would not return. So therefore, they didn't provide any share for him in the property, and they divided the property of their father amongst themselves. And when Nabhaga returned from the place of his spiritual master, they gave him their old father as the share. So here we have to understand that there are two kinds of brahmacharis. Okay, one may return home, marry, and become a householder, whereas the other brahmachari may take the Brihat Vrata to remain a brahmachari perpetually. So the Brihat Vrata brahmachari does not return from the place of the spiritual master. He always stays in the spiritual master. He always stays in the association of spiritual master. He always stays in the personal association of the spiritual master and directly takes sannyas. So there are two types of brahmacharis. Bhrataro bhanta kim mahyam bhajam pitaram tava Swam mamaryastata bhangshur ma putra katadatrita. So Nabhaga inquired, my dear brothers, what have you given to me as my share of our father's property? His elder brothers answered, we have kept our father as your share. But when Nabhaga went to his father and said, my dear father, my elder brothers have given you as my share of property, the father replied, my dear son, do not rely upon their cheating words. I am not your property. Ime angira shatram asate tyasumedhashaha shashtam upetyayaha kave muhyanti karmani. So Nabhaga's father said, all the descendants of Angira are now going to perform a great sacrifice. But although they are very intelligent, On every sixth day, they will be bewildered in performing sacrifice and will make mistakes in their daily duties. He is saying like this to Nabhaga. Nabhaga's father Nabhaga is saying to Nabhaga, Tamstum samshaya sukte dve Vaishvadeve mahatmanaha Teswaryanto dhanam shatra Parisheshitam. So Nabhaga's father continued, go to those great souls and describe two Vedic hymns pertaining to Vaishvadeva. When the great sages have completed the sacrifice and are going to the heavenly planets, they will give you the remnants of the money they have received from the sacrifice. Therefore, go there immediately. Thus, Nabhaga acted exactly according to the advice of his father, and the great sages of the Angira dynasty gave him all their wealth, and then they went to the heavenly planets. So Nabhaga also, got a lot of wealth from the sages, the descendants of Angira, who had actually performed a sacrifice. And when they were going back to the heavenly planets, they gave Nabhaga a lot of wealth. Dashyanti tetha tanarcha tatha sakritavan yatha tasmai datvaya yusvargam desatra parisheshanam. Nabhaga's father continued, go to those great souls and describe the two Vedic hymns. Okay, 4 and 5, I think is the same. So we'll just recite the verse. Dasyanti tetha tanarcha tatha sakritavan yatha tasmai datvaya yusvargam desatra parisheshanam. Tam kaschit svikarishyantam Purusha Krishna Darshanaha Vachotarato Bhyetya Mamedam Vastukam Asu Vasu Mamedam Vastukam Vasu. Thereafter, when Nabhaga was accepting the riches, a black-looking person came from the north to see him and said, all the wealth from the sacrificial arena belongs to me. Let us see what happens then. Mamedam Rishi Virdattam Iti tarhi smamanava Syannau te pitari prashnaha Prishtavan pitaram yatha. Nabhaga then said, these riches belong to me. The great saintly persons have delivered them to me. When Nabhaga said this, the black-looking person replied, let us go to your father and ask him to settle our disagreement. In accordance with this, Nabhaga inquired from his father. So what did Nabhaga inquire from his father? Yajñavastugatam sarvam uchishtam rishayat kvachit chakrurhi bhagam rudraya sadeva sarvam arhati. The father of Nabhaga said, when whatever the great sages sacrificed in the arena of Daksha Yajna, so Nabhaga's father had asked him to go to that Yajna only, where the descendants of Angira were performing this sacrifice. Whatever the great sages sacrificed in the arena of Daksha Yajna, they offered to Lord Shiva as his share. Therefore, everything in the sacrificial arena certainly belongs to Lord Shiva. So Nabhaga's father settled the disagreement. Nabhagastam pranamyaha tavesha kilavastukam ityaha me pita brahman chirasha tvam prasadaye. So now, who is that black-looking person? He is Lord Shiva. So thereupon, after offering obeisances to Lord Shiva, Nabhaga said. So Nabhaga also took his father's advice. He took his father very seriously, and then he immediately offered obeisances to Lord Shiva, and he said, "O worshipable Lord, everything in this arena of sacrifice is yours. This is the assertion of my father. Now, with great respect, I bow my head before you, begging your mercy." Look at this quality of Nabhaga. He was such a gentleman. So this is the quality of a devotee. This is the hallmark of a devotee, that he is actually a gentleman. The moment Nabhaga heard from his father that when his father said that all this belongs to Lord Shiva, immediately he offered everything to Lord Shiva without having any attachment. Okay, And with great respect, he offered everything to Lord Shiva. And then let's see what happened. Yatte pitavadad dharmam tvam cha satyam prabhashase dadamite mantra trisho jnanam brahma sanatanam. So Lord Shiva is very, very happy. And Lord Shiva says, whatever your father has said is the truth, and you are also speaking the same truth. Therefore, I, who knows the Vedic mantras, shall explain transcendental knowledge unto you. So this is how one actually receives transcendental knowledge. How does one receive transcendental knowledge? By pleasing a Guru, by pleasing a Vaishnava, by pleasing the representative of the Supreme Lord. When you become very pleasing to the representative of the Supreme Lord, then you receive transcendental knowledge. It is said, Tatvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshyanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshinaha. So this tattva should actually be revealed in your heart. That is how you understand the tattva. How do you understand tattva? Tatvidhi pranipatena. You have to approach a spiritual personality. You have to approach a representative of the Supreme Lord. Pariprashnena sevaya. You have to become submissive to him. You have to be an attitude of service to him. Upadekshanti te jnanam. And then when such a personality is pleased, then automatically spiritual knowledge is revealed. So now here we see that Nabhasa, he actually pleased Lord Shiva. So when such a personality like Lord Shiva is pleased, automatically, they would want to instruct you. They would want to, teach you. And in this way, spiritual knowledge actually awakens. Spiritual knowledge is not academic knowledge. It is actually a process of receiving the descending mercy, the mercy which descends from the Supreme Lord Krishna through the parampara, through his representatives in the parampara. And how it becomes accessible? It becomes accessible by the means of service. It becomes accessible by the right attitude. It becomes accessible by the right service. It becomes accessible by developing proper attitude towards such representatives, such personalities who actually come in the parampara. So that is actually the secret of spiritual success. The secret of spiritual success is proper attitude. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado yasya prasadan nagati kutopi. When the spiritual master is pleased, then automatically the Supreme Lord is pleased. And when the Supreme Lord is pleased, spiritual knowledge is revealed to you. From the spiritual master to you, the spiritual knowledge is actually gifted when the spiritual master is pleased. And who is the spiritual master? He is the confidential representative of the Supreme Lord. Sakshadharitvena samasta shastre uktash tatabhav yataeva sadhi kintu prabhoya priyaeva tasya vande guru shri charanaravinda. So he is actually the confidential representative of the Supreme Lord. So here we see Lord Shiva is very, very pleased with Nabhasa. Grahana dravinam dattam matsatra parisheshitam ityuktvantarhito rudro bhagavan dharmavatsalaha. So Lord Shiva said, now you may take all the wealth remaining from the sacrifice, for I give it to you. After saying this, Lord Shiva, who is the most adherent to the religious principles, disappeared from the place. So this is the secret actually. Susrusho shraddadhanasya vasudeva katharuchi syan mahat sevaya vipra punya kirtan nishevaya. This is the secret of spiritual success. Pleasing, becoming very pleasing to a representative of the Supreme Lord. When you become very pleasing, when you please the representative of Supreme Lord, when you please them through your service attitude, when you please them through your submission, when you please them through your inquiry, when you please a representative of the Lord by your service attitude, by your humble inquiry, then Lord becomes very pleased. And then you get an attachment towards hearing about Krishna. So when you please a spiritual personality, when we please a spiritual personality by our submissive inquiries, by our service, then we become very dear to the Supreme Lord. And then we automatically get a taste for hearing about the Supreme Lord. So therefore, conversely, if we are not pleasing to such a spiritual personality, then automatically we will not develop taste. Because spiritual knowledge or transcendental knowledge is not academic. It is actually a descending process. It has to be gifted. It cannot be acquired. It has to be revealed. It has to be gifted. It is actually the property of a pure devotee of the Supreme Lord. Yaetat samsmaret prata sayam cha sushamahitaha kavir bhavati mantrajno gatim chaiva tatat manaha. If one hears and chants or remembers this narration in the morning and evening with great attention, he certainly becomes learned, experienced in understanding the Vedic hymns, and expert in self-realization. Nabhagadambarisho bhun mahabhagavata kriti nasprishad brahma shapopi yamna pratihata kvachit. Now, why we are discussing about Nabhaga? Because Ambarish Maharaj is his son. And who is Ambarish Maharaj? He is one of the Bhagavatas, Mahabhagavatas. From Nabhaga, Maharaj Ambarish took birth. Maharaj Ambarish was an exalted devotee, celebrated for his great merits. Although he was cursed by an infallible Brahmana, the curse could not touch him. So going forward, we will be discussing about Ambarish Maharaj. So this is the background of how Ambarish Maharaj took birth. And who is Ambarish Maharaj? Ambarish Maharaj is a Mahabhagavata. So he is one of the 12 Mahajanas actually. Sri Raja Vacha Bhagavan Chrotam Ichchami Rajarsheshtasya Dhimataha Na Prabhut Yatra Nirmukto Brahmadando Duratyayaha. King Parikshit inquired, now, O great personality, Maharaj Ambarish was certainly most exalted and meritorious in character. I wish to hear about him. How surprising it is that the curse of a Brahmana, which is insurmountable, could not act upon him. So, whenever any Brahmana curses you, it is generally said that Brahmana's curse is very powerful. And if you see, Parikshit Maharaj himself was actually a victim to curse of a Brahmana. At least externally, if you see. Of course, internally, it was the Lord's plan that Bhagavatam should be spoken. But still, if you see, Shringi cursed Parikshit Maharaj, and that is why Parikshit Maharaj actually came to hear Srimad Bhagavatam from Sukadeva Goswami. So now he is inquiring, he was such an exalted and meritorious king. He was so exalted in his character. He was such a great devotee. How come? I want to hear about him. And how surprising is it that the curse of a Brahmana, he was actually cursed by Durvasa Muni. That is what he is saying here, right? Although he was cursed by an infallible Brahmana. How is it that although he was cursed by a Brahmana, how is it that it could not act upon him? How come the Brahmana's curse did not act upon him? So, let us see the next verse, what Sukadeva Goswami replies. Shri Sukha Uvacha Ambarisho Mahabhaga Shaptadvipavetim Mahim Avyayam cha Shriyam Labdva Vibhavam Chatulam Bhuvi Meneti Durlabham Pumsham sarvam tat swapna samstutam vidvan vibhava nirvanam tamo vishati yat puman. So Shukadeva Goswami said, Ambarish Maharaj, the most fortunate personality, achieved the rule of the entire world consisting of 7 islands and achieved inexhaustible, unlimited opulence and prosperity on earth. Although such a position is rarely obtained, Maharaj Ambarish did not care for it at all, for he knew very well that all such opulence is material. Like that which is imagined in a dream, such opulence will ultimately be destroyed. The king knew that any non-devotee who attains such opulence merges increasingly into material nature's mode of darkness. Now we see who is Ambarish Maharaj. He was the ruler of the entire world, the entire Bhumandala, not just the earth or not just one small country in the earth. He was the ruler of the entire Bhumandala, consisting of the 7 islands. And he achieved so much of power, so much of opulence, and so much of prosperity. Is it very easy to achieve such a position? Definitely not. But still, Ambarish Maharaj did not have any attachment to it. Because he knew very well that all such opulence is temporary. He knew very well. He knew very well. He was conversant. He was conversant that all such material opulence is just temporary and it is all taken away with time. Then what was his consciousness? His consciousness was that he was just a caretaker. And who is the proprietor? He didn't feel that he is owning the whole Bhumandala. He knew very well. He was conversant. He was cognizant of the fact that Krishna is the supreme and he is the proprietor. He was aware that he has actually been appointed by the Supreme Lord. He has been appointed by the Supreme Lord to take care. He was aware of his position as a caretaker. That is his glory. He was not attached. He knew very well that such opulence is material and he knew very well that he has just been appointed for some time to take care of this responsibility. So, for a devotee, now how come Ambarish Maharaj is like this? Because Ambarish Maharaj is a great devotee. Because Ambarish Maharaj is a great devotee, he is able to recognize the temporary situation of this material opulence. But just by recognizing temporary, it is not that he just recognized the temporary material opulence. It is not that he just recognized the temporary nature of material opulence. Ambarish Maharaj performed his duties very meticulously. It is not that he just knew that everything is temporary and he neglected it because it is anyway temporary. No. He did his duties meticulously. While he was always fixed in serving the Supreme Lord and his devotees. So, he knew that it is temporary, but he also knew that it is temporary, but it actually belongs to the Supreme Lord. And it has been given to him for some time by the will of the Supreme Lord, so that he can take some responsibility on behalf of the Supreme Lord. And he also knew that this is going to go away after some time from him. So he was not attached to it, but he was very, very responsible because although it is temporary, it is actually the property of the Supreme Lord. Everything animate or inanimate belongs to the Supreme Lord. So therefore, because he was a devotee, because he was very conversant about spiritual life, so therefore he knew the temporary situation of or the temporary nature of material opulence. However, so therefore, although he was so rich, although he was so powerful, although he was so influential, although he was so opulent, it could not disturb his consciousness. So having material opulence is not wrong. But when one is not guided properly, then one becomes attached. There may be a very rich man, but he may not be attached at all because he is a great devotee. And there may be a not so rich man, but he is so much attached to whatever little he has. So therefore, for a devotee, material opulence is very insignificant. However, for a non-devotee, material opulence is the cause of increasing bondage. So therefore, Kunti Maharani prays, Janmaishwarya Shrita Shribhir Edamana Mahatpuman Naivarhatya Vidatam Ve Tvama Kinchana Gocharam. Because when one is attached to material opulence, he cannot feelingly call out the Lord's name. When one is attached to the material, what does it mean when one is attached to material opulence? He thinks that he is the owner. He thinks that he is the enjoyer of this opulence. So he is more and more bodily conscious. When he thinks that he is the owner, when he thinks that he is the enjoyer, he thinks that everything is meant for his enjoyment. So therefore, he is more and more bodily conscious. Already, when one is in the material world, he is bodily conscious. And because he is not trained in devotional service, when one is not trained in devotional service, all the material opulences which one gets because of his karma becomes a cause for increasing bondage. Whereas for a devotee, it is not the case. Nothing can bind a devotee. In fact, material opulence is a great asset to a devotee because he can use it very nicely in Krishna's service. And Krishna is very, very careful in giving material opulence to devotees. He gives material opulence only when he feels that this person is going to use it correctly in my service. For example, he gave material opulence to Dhruva Maharaj. He was very confident. He was very confident that Dhruva Maharaj would utilize the material opulence properly. And that is what Dhruva Maharaj did also. Dhruva Maharaj used the material opulence in ruling his kingdom very nicely, in performing many sacrifices, in giving a lot of charity. So he utilized the material opulence in service of the Lord. So when the Lord is confident, then he gives you material opulence. Otherwise, Lord will not give you unnecessarily material opulence that will actually hinder our spiritual progress. So a devotee knows that everything material, anything material is temporary, and non-devotee regards the same temporary material happiness as everything because he doesn't know anything beyond his body. A non-devotee does not know anything beyond his body. He is in this material world because we are all in this material world because we have rebelled against the Supreme Lord. And even in the material world, if one does not follow the scriptural injunctions, if one does not take to the process of devotional service, either to direct devotional service or to devotional service in some way or the other, then what happens? He becomes increasingly bodily conscious. Already because he is rebellious of the Lord, he is put into this material world. And when he is put into this material world, the living entity gets a body. And in this body also, if he does not accept devotional service, then what happens? He becomes more and more bodily conscious. He thinks that he is this body and everything in relation with this body is his. And therefore he thinks that this happiness, which is actually got by my body. Body means, it means everything. It means the gross body and the subtle body, both. If my mind is happy, then I am happy. If my intelligence is satisfied, I am happy. If my false ego is satisfied, I am happy. Which means he identifies himself with a person who does not take to the process of devotional service, he identifies himself more and more with his gross body and subtle body. He thinks that he is this gross body. He thinks that he is the false ego. He thinks that he is the mind. So therefore, when these things are, gratified, when the mind gets pleasure or when his ego is, fanned, then he becomes so happy and he thinks that this happiness is everything. He does not know that he is much beyond all these things. Vasudeve Bhagavati Tat Bhakteshu Cha Sadhushu Prapto Bhavam Param Vishwam Yenedam Losh Ravat Smritam. So Ambarish Maharaj was a great devotee of the Supreme Lord, Vasudeva, and of the saintly persons who are the Lord's devotees. This is a very, very important principle. Because of this devotion, he thought of the entire universe as being insignificant as a piece of a stone. So you just see here, Ambarish Maharaj, it is not that he was just a great devotee of the Supreme Lord. He was also a great devotee of the persons who are Lord's devotees. So there are three levels of bhaktas: Kanishtadhikari, Madhyamadhikari, and Uttamadhikari. What is a Kanishtadhikari? A Kanishtadhikari is also a devotee, but he feels that, his devotion is only for Krishna. He does not give attention to respecting other Vaishnavas. So Ambarish Maharaj was not such a devotee. Sorry. Ambarish Maharaj was not such a devotee. He was a perfect devotee. He knew that Lord's devotees are very, very dear to the Lord. So therefore, he paid great attention to serving the Lord's devotees also very carefully, knowing that they are also very dear to the Lord. So, this was about Ambarish Maharaj, and because of this devotion, to the Supreme Lord, he thought of the entire universe as being insignificant as piece of a stone. Just look at the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee. Because he is such a devotee of the Supreme Lord, he knew that there are millions and trillions of universes like this. And he knows that this whole universe is, just as insignificant as a piece of a small stone. Because he could understand the supremacy of the Lord. Bhaktyamam abhijanati yavan yachashmi tattvataha. So because he was actually a devotee of the Lord, he could actually understand the supremacy of the Lord. Only when one becomes a devotee of the Lord, only when one takes to the process of Shravanam and Kirtanam, under guidance of spiritual master, in association of devotees, the supremacy of Lord is revealed to one. So one has to take to the process of Shravanam and Kirtanam under the guidance of the spiritual master and render service in association of devotees. When one does this, then one is actually gifted about, to some extent he can understand how great God is. Nobody can understand about the Lord completely, but the Lord reveals, as per one's surrender. So therefore, because of this devotion, he thought of the entire universe as being insignificant. And just imagine a non-devotee. He thinks that his body is everything and he is the center of the world. And just think about him, Ambarish Maharaj. Although he was such a great devotee, of the Supreme Lord, still he is thinking that this whole universe itself is insignificant. Because it is only one of the many, many millions and trillions of universe which is actually created by the Supreme Lord. So these are very famous verses. Savai mana Krishna padara vindayor vachamsi vaikunta gunano varnane karau harer mandira marjanadisho shrutim chakarachyuta shatkatodaye mukunda lingalaya darshane drishau tat pratyagatrat parshenga sangamam Granam cha tatpada saroja saurabhe Shrimat tulasya rasanam tadarpite Padav hare kshetra padanu sarpane Shiro rishikesha padabhivandane Kamam cha dasye natu kama kamyaya Yatottama shloka janashrayarati. So these verses describe how Maharaj Ambarish actually conducted himself. Ambarish Maharaj, Ambarish Maharaj always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna. He engaged his words in describing the glories of the Lord. He engaged his hands in cleaning the Lord's temple. He engaged his ears in hearing the words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Krishna, Krishna's temples and Krishna's places like Mathura and Vrindavan. He engaged his sense of touch in touching the bodies of the Lord's devotees. He engaged his sense of smell in smelling the fragrance of tulasi offered to the Lord. He engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasad. He engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and temples of the Lord. He engaged his head in bowing down before the Lord. And he engaged all his desires in serving the Lord 24 hours a day. Indeed, Maharaj Ambarish never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in devotional service in various engagements related to the Lord. This is the way to increase attachment for the Lord and be completely free from all material desires. What a beautiful example. How he was conducting his life. Every sense, every part of the body, whether it be the gross body, the mind, the intelligence, or kaya, manasa, vacha, his words, and his hands, his ears, everything was engaged in serving the Supreme Lord. So, because he was very well aware that this body also belongs to the Supreme Lord. And when the body is actually engaged in serving the Supreme Lord, then what happens? Who is the owner of this body? Who is the owner of these senses? So he was very well aware of this fact. So therefore, it is a great example for all of us. How should one should always engage one's mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of the Lord. One should engage one's words in describing the glories of the Lord. Because if we are not going to describe the glories of the Lord, if we are not engaged in describing the glories of the Lord, definitely we are going to talk nonsense. Or we are going to talk something which is actually not going to benefit us spiritually. And he engaged his hands in cleaning the Lord's temple. So it is said in Guru Ashtakam, Shri Vigrahara Dhananityanana Shringaratan Mandiramarchanado. To the spiritual master, this is one of the things which a spiritual master does. He engages the disciple in Shri Vigraha, worshipping the Shri Vigraha, Shri Vigraharadhana, Aradhana of the Shri Vigraha. Shri Vigrahara Dhananityanana Shringaratan Mandiramarchanado. He is also going to engage, he also engages the disciple in cleaning the Lord's temple. What happens by cleaning the Lord's temple? By cleaning the Lord's temple, one's heart becomes purified. And how did he engage his ears? He engaged in his ears in hearing the words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna, which means he engaged his ears in hearing Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavad Gita is spoken by Krishna and Bhagavatam is spoken about Krishna by devotees of Krishna. And how did he engage his eyes? He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Krishna, Krishna's temples and Krishna's holy places. How did he engage his sense of touch? He engaged his sense of touch in touching the bodies of the Lord's devotees, in serving them, in embracing the devotees. How did he engage his sense of smell? He engaged his sense of smell in smelling the fragrance of tulasi offered to the Lord. So therefore, all of us must offer tulasi, and then one must engage in smelling the fragrance of tulasi and flowers offered to the Lord. And how did he engage his tongue? So every sense has to be engaged in the Lord's service. This is the inspiration we get from Ambarish Maharaj. No sense, because the senses are so strong. Chanchalinhi mana Krishna pranati balavatridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayureva dushkaram. Unless the senses and the mind are actually engaged in serving the Supreme Lord, the senses are bound to cheat us. The senses are actually bound to degrade us. The senses are bound to make us attached to something which is not real or to something which is not permanent. So one must ensure that one actually engages all of one's senses. What happens when one engages one's senses in service of the Lord? ऋषिकेन ऋषिकेश सेवनम भक्तिरुच्यते सर्वोपाधिविनिर्मुक्तं तत्परत्वेन निर्मलं ऋषिकेन ऋषिकेश सेवनम भक्तिरुच्यते. Rishikesha, Krishna is also called as Rishikesha. Rishikesha means the master of senses. When you engage your senses in serving the master of senses, then your senses automatically are controlled. So therefore, when we engage our senses in serving the master of the senses or in serving the senses of the Supreme Lord, then our senses are automatically controlled. So because he engaged, this is very important for all of us. All of us must ensure that we are engaged. Not just hearing. One must be engaged in serving the Lord. One must be engaged. One must engage his mind. One must engage his words. One must engage his actions. Everything, each of our senses should be engaged in serving the Lord. So we should conduct our life in such a way that each of these senses of ours is actually engaged in serving the Lord. Then the senses automatically become satisfied. Because the master of senses is pleased. Who is the master of all these senses? The master of senses is Krishna. So when the master is pleased, automatically the senses are also satisfied. Generally, and what is sense gratification? What is the nature of sense gratification? The nature of sense gratification is that the happiness derived due to sense gratification is temporary. Now what happened, you see here? Because he engaged all his senses like this, he never desired anything for his own sense gratification. And he engaged all his senses in devotional service in various engagements of the Lord. So it is our responsibility that we all take some kind of engagement in serving the Lord. The engagement can be as per our nature. For some devotees, it can be, worshipping the deity. For some others, it can be, teaching Srimad Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. And for some, it may be cooking. Or for some, it may be, managing. Or for some others, it may be something else. But we have to ensure that we all have one prominent engagement. And who will engage us? This is most important. Otherwise, our Bhagavatam class, which we discuss in the morning, will become like any other. There are so many channels nowadays in the TV. Everywhere, so many lectures are given. So many people give so many lectures and discourses, even in spirituality. If we do not take the responsibility to be engaged properly, then this 45 minutes of our Bhagavatam discussion will become like another TV serial. So it is very, very important that all of us take responsibility to be engaged. That is what we actually learn from Ambarish Maharaj's life. It is our responsibility to ensure that we are all engaged. We can everybody may not be able to do everything, but we must accept some responsibility on behalf of Guru. So for that, we should have a Guru. We should have a person who can engage us. If we do not have a person who can engage us, how can we be engaged? So it is our responsibility to be engaged. And more importantly, it is our responsibility to look for a person who can actually engage us in serving the Lord, who can guide us how to serve the Lord, who can instruct us how to serve the Lord, who can chastise us if there are some corrections to be done with respect to our service. So unless we look for such a person, how can we be engaged? Because that person will know everything about you. He will know your spiritual standing. He will know your weaknesses. He will know your strengths. He will know what is your nature. And accordingly, he will engage you. So only when you are engaged, when you take some responsibility on behalf of Guru and Krishna, then all your senses will be engaged. For example, if you take deity worship, all our senses will be engaged. If you take any service seriously, then all our senses will actually be engaged. For example, you take deity worship. You will always keep thinking about the deity. There are so many devotees in our community here who are who do deity worship so nicely. They're completely engaged in deity worship. I have been seeing them for a very long time now. They're always thinking about the deity. They're always thinking about how to collect flowers for the deity. They're always thinking about what bhoga to be offered to the deity. They're always thinking about how to dress the deity. So with their mind, with their intelligence, and with their hands, with their eyes, they are completely involved in serving the deity. Of course, they have their other occupational duties also, but despite having all this, the deity worship is so nicely managed. Not only at temple, they worship the deity with so much sincerity at home also. So there are devotees like this. I feel so inspired seeing them. And there are some people who take up other responsibilities. So what happens when you take responsibilities? All your senses are absorbed. Sorry, all your senses are engaged. And when your senses are engaged, your mind is absorbed. Then you automatically become Krishna conscious. So therefore, it is very, very important for all of us to be engaged. And in order to be engaged, somebody should engage us, right? So we must look for such a person who can actually engage us in serving the Lord. When we actually look for such a person and when we take the responsibility to be engaged, then all the philosophy which we actually hear in Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam class, only then it actually appeals to us. Otherwise it will just be on the platform of theoretical knowledge, because realization will come only through service. So realization will come only through proper engagement. So it is a very important lesson for all of us. So we can stop today. And how to execute devotional service, we will just see this. One must execute devotional service under the guidance of a devotee. So therefore, if we have to be engaged, we should have a guidance of a devotee. So therefore, we have to look for such a devotee. If we are already having one, then it is good. If we are not having such a devotee in our life, we have to look for association of such a devotee who can actually guide us. Because unless we have such a guidance, we are simply, it will not be of any much use. It is not possible to train oneself without the guidance from the spiritual master. So therefore, according to the instructions of Srila Rupa Goswami, the first business of a devotee is to accept a bona fide spiritual master who can train him to engage his various senses in rendering transcendental service to the Lord. So this is the most important aspect of devotional service, to accept a bona fide spiritual master. So therefore, if one wants to understand the Supreme Lord in completeness, one must follow the prescriptions given by Krishna by following in the footsteps of Ambarish Maharaj. So we have completed 20 verses today. We are 5 minutes over time. If there are any questions, we can take for another 5-10 minutes. Hare Krishna Mataji. Dhanavad Pranam.
Prabhuji, I have a question.
Yes, Mataji.
When it comes to deity worship, is deity worship more important or chanting 16 rounds is more important?
Chanting 16 rounds is most important.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. But when we have to compulsorily, we have taken an oath that we'll offer so many times bhoga and all. We do, when we call Gaurnitai home, like Panchaloha Gaurnitai, I have seen some devotees. They take a oath that every day they will offer some bhoga at the particular times. And sometimes it happens that some guests arrive and during festivals and all.
Yes.
So the time management is a little bit difficult.
Yes.
Chanting on mala becomes a really big challenge. We
See,
can do chanting.
Yeah.
We can do chanting on doing work and all. That will be continuous anyway. But that is not counting, no, Prabhuji. That is not countable.
See, this is a very, the principle I can tell you. Specific details you can consult somebody who is guiding you. But in principle, Mataji, sometimes it does happen, but chanting 16 rounds is most important. Say if I tell, for example, you would think, I'm going to give Bhagavatam class today. Okay?
Yes.
If I ask you, Mataji, like Mataji, I want to prepare very well for the Bhagavatam class, therefore I'm not able to chant 16 rounds. Is that acceptable, Mataji? Tell me.
We have to prioritize. You can do the chanting next day also, no, Prabhuji?
No, that is not correct. That is not correct, Mataji. The primary vow which we take before the spiritual master is to chant 16 rounds. Suppose my day is so busy that I am not, I have two options. Either I can chant 16 rounds or I can give a Bhagavatam class. I must give preference to my chanting of 16 rounds.
Okay.
That is the vow we have taken in front of the deities, in presence of the spiritual master. So that is most important. Of course, sometimes, we may not be able to chant all the rounds at a time, but definitely we must be able to chant 16 rounds. And 16 rounds means 16 rounds with mala.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay? Just because I'm having deities or I'm very busy with the deities, if I leave my 16 rounds, then better not to take that service or keep that service as minimal.
Okay.
And today we are discussing about deity worship, and I'm very happy we have our Anand Vrindavan Prabhu also in the class. Anand Vrindavan Prabhu, you want to add something? He does deity worship so nicely in our community, and he does deity worship in temple also. They have Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra deities at their home also, and Prabhu is, he is working in a very big post in a very reputed organization, but still he does his service so nicely. And when I go to their house, when I see Lord Jagannath, it is so pleasing. So maybe you can add something, Prabhu.
And thank you so much, Prabhuji, for all these words. But it's all my mother only who is maintaining and doing everything at home. So that I cannot take credit. And yeah, that chanting, na Prabhuji, that is actually true. I mean, whatever service we have, but first priority should be chanting, definitely, or anything. Sometimes in festival days, we are so busy that we are not able to chant, but that consciousness will not come, even though we are busy in so many services, right? Because we always have that back of the mind. Okay, chanting is still pending, chanting is still pending. So this is important, definitely, Prabhuji. Because in our sadhana chart also, we will not write how many services we did or how many time we spent in taking care of deities and all. But what we write is how many rounds did we complete? What about reading, hearing? So these things are always comes first.
So these are all like rice, dal, sabji, chapati. So I asked Anand Vrindavan Prabhu to speak because I have never done deity worship, Mataji, actually. But I take a lot of inspiration from Anand Vrindavan Prabhu, and I also want to learn from him. But somehow I have to take time and learn from him. And he does deity. He and many others are also there, but he is one among the prominent devotees who is very, very sincere in worshipping the deities here, whether it is Singapore Township or whether it is his own house or whether it is Rampalli. So that is why I asked him to share.
Nice.
Okay,
thank you so much. Yes, Prabhuji, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Anand Vrindavan Prabhu.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Okay. If there are no questions, we can stop and we can resume from 21st verse tomorrow. Thank you all for your participation. Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.